Hello, and welcome to the State of Soy. I'm your host, Aaron Putze. Given agriculture's importance to Iowa, much of what is discussed at the Iowa State House has implications for soybean farmers. The same holds true for what takes place in our nation's capital. Whether here at home or nearly 1,000 miles away, farmers are respected for their connection to the issues that they care so much about. That's because so much of what happens in Iowa and our nation intersects with what farm families do. Transportation, taxation, regulation, international diplomacy, energy, immigration, and education, these are just a few of the many issues that are woven into our nation's agricultural fabric. It's important, therefore, that farmers have a voice in the state legislature and Congress. Joining us today for a conversation about policy and its implications for soybean production and agriculture are three of those voices. Lindsay Greiner is president of the Iowa Soybean Association. First elected to the Iowa Soybean Board in 2015, Lindsay farms with his family near Keota in southeast Iowa, managing a diversified farming operation that includes soybeans, corn, and pigs. Dave Tierney is Director of Government Affairs for Bayer Crop Science. He was raised and remains involved in a family farm in southern Iowa. A graduate of Iowa State University, Dave provides oversight of all state legislative and regulatory activities for Bayer Crop Sciences across Upper Midwest and Puerto Rico. Michael Dolch serves as Public Affairs Director for the Iowa Soybean Association. He was born and raised on the family farm near Villisca in southwest Iowa. Prior to joining the Iowa Soybean Association, Michael served as a legislative assistant to Senator Joni Ernst, helping manage ag, trade, and biofuels issues. So welcome to you all. Welcome, Lindsay, Dave, and Michael. And David, I think it's important maybe to start with you, given your role with Bayer Crop Sciences, and I think to farmers, maybe they're still associating you with Monsanto. And of course, there's been a merger. So tell us a little bit about that merger and how your role has evolved or maybe not evolved with the merger.
Aaron, thank you. Thrilled to be here. You know, the good news is the team I'm part of in government affairs, our role has not changed. Coming from the Monsanto side of the business, that group now, we are Bayer Crop Science. So when I'm in the Des Moines Capitol last year and past sessions, it's always been about agriculture. Today, is still the same case. Mm-hmm. So we're a couple months now into the new company. It was always our goal from day one that our customers would not know it really even occurred to them, and we hope and are still striving for that to be the case, certainly with spring coming. But within government affairs, too, as a resource for legislators and policymakers and organizations such as this, myself and my team, we're still all in on agriculture, and that's our focus with Bayer Crop Science.
Well, I know you spend a lot of time at the State House here in Iowa and elsewhere, and I know that's where we will find Michael a lot as well. And really, there's a lot that goes into preparing for a legislative session. And we just gavelled in here in Iowa, last month. But there's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes to make sure that the association, Iowa Soybean Association, our farmers are prepared. So tell us a little bit about the process in leading up to the start of a session, and maybe even touching on when our soybean farmers gathered for their annual policy session in December, and how that really helps set the course then for another session that we're in the midst of.
Sure, and I'll begin by just covering our policy development process and what that looks like here at Iowa Soybean Association. It's a year-long process. It's a continuous process. There's no start and stop. We're always surfacing issues depending on what's on farmers' plates and what's on their radar, what they're hearing from the ground and the farm gate. We really kind of kick that process off early summer with an annual survey that's sent out to all farmer members. That's really the issue surfacing piece of it. And then throughout the summer and into the early fall, before session would kick off and we begin to set some priorities, we'll have small group sessions, legislative sessions throughout the state of Iowa in all 9 districts for the Iowa Soybean Association. We bring folks in, we have some conversation, discuss the policy document that was ratified the year before. We'll take those suggestions, that feedback, and then also the survey results into our policy conference, which is typically held in December. That's when our delegates have the opportunity to discuss and debate the policy and set legislative priorities moving forward. And we just finished that process up December of 2018.
So we've got rules, we've got process kind of determined. So let's jump into the issues. So when you visited with farmers here last summer, moving into the fall, and then with the legislative session quickly on the horizon, what rose to the top in terms of issues that are on the minds of farmers?
Sure, and there's no shortage of issues, as you all know. And, you know, to no surprise, trade was seemingly top of mind for all of our farmers across the state and across the Midwest. Specifically on the state level, as we look at those priorities, conservation, water quality rose to the top once again. This last year we did see some movement with Senate File 512. It was the first bill that Governor Reynolds signed into law this past session, providing some dedicated water quality funding. We're hoping that we can capitalize upon that this session in the 88th, moving some additional funding forward, helping put those conservation practices on the ground. Kind of in that same space, conservation was talked about in terms of CRP, making sure that, you know, beginning young farmers and ranchers do have access to land and aren't competing with government programs, but also ensuring that the right acres are being enrolled. The edge of field practices, the edge of field acres that we can employ those practices on are covered. And I will say, going back to trade, what I talked about early and often, you know, a priority that we're looking at on the federal level falls within Farm Bill jurisdiction, and that's building out our trade promotion programs, market access development program, and our foreign market development program to ensure that we have, you know, market access and a place to land our product given the turbulent trade times that we're in.
Well, whether it's at the state level or at the national level, these issues in many cases are woven. And as a farmer and as president of Iowa Soybean Association, Lindsay, what issues out there have really captured your attention based on some of those that Michael reviewed there? What are top of mind for you, both at the state and the federal level?
Well, I think I'll start with the federal level. A lot of farmers are thinking now, they're wishing that we could get the Farm Bill rolled out, get the rules made, and so we know what kind of program we're going to be operating under. So I think that there's a frustration building with partial government shutdowns. They would just as soon see people stay there and work and get the farm program rolled out. And the next thing that farmers are concerned about is getting the USMCA put into place. Because that's a trade that is important to us. The deal is done. We need to get it through the Congress now and make sure that that takes effect. Those are two big federal issues. On the state, I think the one issue that keeps coming up all the time, and Michael touched on it, is water quality. So we did get a water quality bill passed, the 512 last session. A lot of people thought maybe a little underfunded. And a lot of people probably still think that. So I think that's probably on people's mind coming into this legislative session in Iowa is what are we going to do to more fully fund water quality?
Well, water is certainly on the minds of farmers right now as we look at what's been abnormally wet, and that could have major implications on getting the crop in the ground this spring. And speaking of other issues close to home, we have a question from Laura Fell from Shaler, Iowa. Let's hear that now.
Hi, I'm Laura Fell, a farmer from Shaler, Iowa. And like most farmers, we've been working on our taxes. So when is Iowa going to couple the 179 with the federal income tax?
That's a timely question from Laura, given we're in the midst of tax season right now. So you want to take a swing at that one, Michael?
Yeah, certainly, Aaron. And this question was asked time and time again as we traveled throughout our policy development process as well. And as folks realize, it's been made permanent at the federal level, just waiting for it to be coupled at the state level. This is Section 179 again. The hope is sooner rather than later, but I do realize that hope only goes so far. There may be an appetite this session, given that they're looking in recent weeks at expanding Section 179, and this may be a vehicle to again go ahead and couple that at the state level and provide that for farmers here across the state.
Is this something that we need to look at every year? Can something be done here that's more permanent?
Sure, and I think that's what folks are looking at now. And I think there's maybe a longer-term fix that we can look at going forward. And again, we may have a vehicle here in this 88th General Assembly to move this forward on a more permanent basis. And I'm curious, Lindsay, how does this affect your operation?
Well, it affects my operation. It affects almost everyone's operation because you get the deductibility on the federal taxes, and then you don't get it on the state taxes, and it creates a huge discrepancy between the two. So it really makes your state income tax bill much higher, and farmers are investing in equipment, buildings, and kind of counting on a deduction to help them out on their taxes, especially in a year when, you know, maybe profitability is not real big, but what that creates is a shortfall in money to pay your taxes. So you need the deduction. I would love to see them make it permanent, because then you have predictability when it comes to tax planning from a farmer standpoint.
So speaking of predictability, maintaining, you know, those tools that we have, that farmers have, to grow a crop is also critically important. And we hear a lot in the news about glyphosate, dicamba. So give us an update. Where are we on the glyphosate issue, Dave? And also, as we move into that year 3 with really utilizing dicamba as a tool out there in the fields, give us, where are we at with both of those products?
Happy to. So first on glyphosate, just to review a little, there was a trial in California, specifically in the San Francisco district, and a jury trial. And we certainly feel for the plaintiff in this situation with a horrible case, but it was about whether glyphosate caused his cancer. From our vantage point, we know we have 40 years of data and over 800 studies that have been done here in the United States and in countries all over the world, and there's not one government body that not once has said it might cause cancer. And so labeled rates of glyphosate absolutely are safe. In a jury trial in California, you know, it didn't go well for us on the first round, which is why we obviously have appealed. And that appeal, actually, that process will start here relatively soon, and we're anxious to move forward in the second phase of the trial again, because the science is absolutely critical here, and you know, we're optimistic that as we go through the appeal process, the science will prevail.
So that tool, which leads us then to the dicamba topic, and as we are in the midst of, again, educational sessions, training for farmers, how has that evolved, and what do you expect in 2019?
Well, we're thrilled with how Extend Soybeans, and there's 2 other registrants out there as well besides Bear Crop Science, but we are in our 3rd year. We just got a new 2-year label from EPA. It had a few little revisions in that label. Basically 45 days after planting is a cutoff date for application. Also a change there too, if those soybeans are starting to bloom, we don't want you spraying. And those 2 things were big changes and really positive changes as we looked at that new federal label. It is a restricted use product, and part of that is mandatory training. So we are right now in the middle of having training sessions throughout the state of Iowa and talking to growers and again reviewing those changes to the label. You know, we have unfortunately a few troublesome weeds here in Iowa. We think dicamba is a great tool tied with glyphosate. You know, I think of 2 especially, but there's several there, and you know, year 3, we're glad to be here and anxious to get trained, you know, get the training completed, because spring will be here pretty quick. But we have a label in 34 states.
And as you pointed out, weed management is critical, and having those tools and, you know, the product there for farmers like you, Lindsay, matter more than ever.
Well, it gets more important all the time. You know, as you come up with weed resistance issues, there's a lack of new chemistries and new technology. This is new. It's proven to work. I think that it's a very valuable tool to soybean farmers. It just takes a little time to learn how to use it in the proper way and manage it correctly, but it's a tool that we really need. So, you know, we're looking forward to the future and how this technology works.
Let's talk Farm Bill. Let's get right to it. There's been some impasses, starts, stops with that. That really matters to farmers. It brings in some information to them, really some predictability into their operations. So give us the latest about the Farm Bill and how you see it rolling forward.
Sure, Aaron. And when you talk about the outlook for agriculture going forward, there hasn't been a lot of optimism in the ag industry, especially for our farmers. And, you know, I think the Farm Bill, given its bipartisan passage late last year, December of 2018, in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, and then also President Trump signing it into law in December, I think that's an opportunity for farmers to smile, to enjoy, kind of where they are and where we're going. And with that passage and signage into law, we move into the implementation of the Farm Bill. And as Lindsay touched on earlier, it's a matter of, writing those rules, those regulations moving forward, making sure that those programs are administered according to congressional intent. So this will provide farmers some certainty and that predictability that they need going forward, especially given what they've been saddled with the last several months, upwards of a year, and before that. So trade tensions, Farm Belt bankruptcies have reached a decade-long high. So this is an opportunity, to move forward and to hopefully provide that certainty and predictability.
Something that came out of Congress at a time when it just seems to be a lot of gridlock, a lot of partisanship. So it is something that we can take some pride in as farmers in agriculture that moved through. What gets your attention within the Farm Bill, Lindsay? What did you pay attention to? What matters for your farm here as we move forward?
Well, there are a couple things in this new Farm Bill that matter. There's an increased funding for foreign market development and market access programs. A little bit extra funding for research and conservation. So those are pretty big issues. But I think the good thing about this program is it's basically the same farm program we've been operating under for 5 years, with a couple little changes, like electing between PLC and ARC on an annual basis rather than locking yourself in for 5 years. I think that's good. Crop insurance was left pretty much untouched. I think that was important to a lot of farmers. So I think the good news is that we've basically got the same Farm Bill we've had for 5 years, so we kind of know what we're going to get. The added funding for market development, I think, is welcomed by a lot of farmers, especially at a time when prices are down.
So, if I may, Aaron,
please.
Real quickly, I think Lindsay hit the nail on the head. This isn't a revolutionary farm bill. This is an evolutionary farm bill. So this farm bill, by and large, was all about tweaks and improvements to programs that farmers have told members of Congress, and we've heard loud and clear, that have worked and will continue to work. And the increased eligibility in the ARC and PLC programs are a prime example of giving farmers that flexibility they need given the current circumstances they're in.
Let's go back to the field and get another question. This one from Dean Coleman from Humboldt, Iowa.
How do you see infrastructure playing into anything that gets through Congress this year? I know the president ran on infrastructure as one of his campaign promises, and he's made good on quite a few of them. So my thoughts are what happens this year with the president and the Congress and getting something done on our locks and dams, roads and bridges, and helping out our transportation issues.
So infrastructure matters. That's very true. How do you respond to that question there from Dean?
Well, it's our competitive advantage, right? And where I'm on the state team, we have a federal team based in D.C. They obviously look at that. As we were talking about the Farm Bill earlier, infrastructure is right there too. We help supply farmers like Lindsay and an industry with, we hope some of the best seeds and these yields, but again, you got to get it out of here, right? And so that's roads, it's our bridges, it's our trains, it's our river system. So we're always very interested and supportive of that.
If you can't transport, if you can't get it to market, you can't. Why grow it, right?
Well, like Dave said, that's always been our competitive advantage, is our ability to get products where they need to go. And I think over the last 50 to 60 years, we've kind of neglected some of our infrastructure. So I think it was promising when the new administration took over, there was a little bit of an increased amount of discussion about infrastructure, but hasn't been much action. And I think that's the thing that we would really like to see, is maybe some of these words put into action and some of this infrastructure-related issues actually addressed and actually spend some money on them and improve them.
So as we visit with legislators, with our congressional representatives, infrastructure is always on that list. It seems it's been there. I think there's a lot of hope and desire to make some headway on that. And you could say the same for biofuels. And if we know nothing, we do know this, and that is domestic demand matters, and biofuels are a big part of that. So update us on where we are at on that important topic and what the message is that we're sharing with elected leaders.
Absolutely, Aaron. And you look at this current administration, they've already placed an emphasis on renewable energy, renewable fuels. You can see that with the movement on E15 at the pump and trying to roll out that year-round. But specifically when it comes to our soybean farmers, biodiesel is key, and we've got a glut of soybeans piled up around the state. And what better way to help our own farmers by helping put that and add value to those beans, and one way is through biodiesel. One issue that we've been urging Congress to take action on is a long-term extension of our biodiesel tax credit. It's a $1 per gallon tax credit for blenders. It's an incentive to blend. We've got a lot of companies we've heard in recent weeks that have been sitting on money that they're willing to invest, capital investment, make capital investment to build out biodiesel plants, to expand, to build new. They just need that certainty again to move that forward. And we joined National Biodiesel Board recently with a couple Iowa soybean members that tagged along for that fly-in in Washington, D.C., again urging a longer-term extension of the biodiesel tax credit. Granted, that has been stymied a bit by the government shutdown, the partial government shutdown, but we'll continue to knock on doors and let folks know that that's important.
And in addition to the tax credits, there's also the issue of waivers being granted to some refiners. So touch on that and what our message is there on the refining side and some of these waivers that are being given that probably shouldn't be given.
Well, these waivers were given to what were called small refineries, small-scale refineries. Well, you find out that these small-scale refineries are actually making millions of dollars. So it's an anti-competitive issue, really, when it comes down to soy biodiesel and farmers. So these tax credits are important to farmers. Biodiesel provides an extra 63 cents per bushel of value to every soybean farmer. It adds about $1.50 per head on a market hog, about $12 per head on a fed cattle. So it not only impacts soybean farmers, but it impacts livestock farmers as well. And to me, biodiesel is a true success story. It has added value to farmers, but it's also a green fuel. I was just in New York about 8 weeks ago, and they love biofuels, bioheat, biodiesel. They are increasing their usage of biofuels because it lowers their carbon footprint, their greenhouse gas emissions. And so there is a lot of potential for growth, not only on the East Coast, but on the West Coast as well. So it's a true success story, and what the biodiesel industry needs more than anything right now is some certainty on these tax credits. I know there's talk of putting in a 7-year tax credit with declining credits as you go down the line, which would be very welcome by the biodiesel industry because it provides predictability.
Well, and it's a win-win. We're improving the environment. We're providing more markets for domestically produced grain, and we all know, based on last month's crop report or the reports that came out earlier this month, we have a lot of soybeans. And so as you also think about and reflect on the governor's State of the State address, talked a lot about infrastructure and the importance of that, but also access to broadband, access to a workforce. Are those issues that you're also hearing about, Dave, as you're walking the halls there in the State House?
Absolutely. We're really excited about the focus on broadband. You know, those of us that maybe are more here in central Iowa or around some urban centers, we're pretty accustomed to be able to have access on our phones and our iPads and our computers. But as you get into some more rural parts of the state, they really are handicapped. And, you know, companies like mine and the whole industry is evolving around you know, this sector right now too, to get farmers good information in real time, Lindsay, right? And that you can have it in your planner, you can have it in your combine, you can move that with you on your tablet, and broadband is the linkage that makes that happen.
And it's needed. I mean, it's needed on farm. This isn't a luxury item. This is something that, with the kind of improvements made in the equipment, and as you pointed out, you really need that kind of service available, not just in the Des Moines area, but in places like Keota and Villisca, if we're going to be doing what we need to be doing out in our farm fields.
Yeah. I will tell you that, a guy my age, this technology thing came on later on in my career. So it's been a little harder for a guy like me to grab a hold of it and run. But the younger generation, I have a son, 29-year-old son that's going to be 29 in September, that farms with me. And, it's just second nature to him. So it is absolutely the future. So you're right, Dave. We need to make those improvements because that's what the future is.
It is.
Yeah. So let's wrap up here. It's been a great conversation. I think we could spend a couple of weeks just throwing around the various policy issues. But let's go do a quick lightning round here and limit your responses. We want to get to as many questions as we can here. So I'll start with you, Lindsay. If you could cite one issue that, if resolved, would make the 2019 legislative session a success for farmers here in Iowa, what would it be?
I think it would be water quality funding.
Dave?
Water quality is big. Last year was a good start. I tell you what, though, I think we made some progress last year. Certainly more needs to be done. I'm really excited, though, about workforce development and this broadband issue, though. I think, we need to do a lot on several fronts, but really excited about what the governor had to say.
Michael?
Sure. I'll dovetail on what these fellows have said. I think water quality will be talked about. I know connectivity and the governor's emphasis there. But at the end of the day, I think if we can avoid bills that limit farmers and their ability to operate, and they've got the ability to do what they do best at the farm gate, that's a success.
All right. Well, let's stay with you here then, Michael, on the second question. Yes or no? Congress passes new and significant funding for infrastructure in 2019.
Significance the key word there. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some funding. It may come in the form of a highway bill as we gear up for the 2020 reauthorization. However, significant, I think, is going to be a challenge.
What do you think?
It's certainly a focus of President Trump. We heard about it at the State of the Union address, here recently too, and as a candidate, when we saw him here in Iowa a couple of years ago as candidate Trump, he's going down the list of trying to accomplish these things he told us about as a candidate.
Infrastructure happening, significant funding, Lindsay?
I think it's going to be talked about a lot and very little done about it.
All right, so let's start back with Lindsay and we'll come back around. What are we more likely to see by July? $7.25 beans or $11.25 beans?
Oh, well, being the optimistic guy I am.
I thought you would go there.
I think they'll be closer to 9.
Oh, man, you left us in suspense. What do you think, Dave?
How about at least 10? We got the market facilitation program has been a godsend, right? It really has. For us this year, there'll be a delta there to make up. But, I know I always look for that $10 bean mark. I'm optimistic we can keep hitting
Glass half full, too?
Indeed. I'm optimistic, probably more so than these fellas here. I think we hit, $11 beans maybe by July if we continue to build on the momentum of selling beans to China, and we find new uses and capitalize on what we know about beans already. All
right. Well, when we always save the hardest question for last. I know that was an easy one. So the real hard one here is, who is your pick? Who holds that World Series championship trophy come October? So we're right here around the start of another Major League Baseball season. So who's your pick?
Oh, you're asking me first.
That's right.
Okay. Well, I'm a little torn. I love my Iowa Cubs, and good farm team helping that Chicago. But I work for a company. I find myself in St. Louis a lot, and so it's the Cardinals are due again.
Oh,
and,
all right. That's an interesting mix. What do you think?
Cubs.
Oh.
As Lou Holtz would say, not so fast. But at the end of the day, I have to go with my hometown Rockies. We've made, it's been a tough road to host since, 2007 when they made the World Series. But I'm optimistic my Rockies can get it done this year.
Well, and I'm wrong a lot, so I'm going with the Pittsburgh Pirates, my favorite team, and that's a whole nother episode. So with that, let's close the conversation. And again, thank you very much for really tossing around the issues here today. Want to thank Lindsay Greiner, Dave Tierney, and also Michael Dolch. And again, thanks to the Machine Shed Restaurant for hosting us again here in Urbandale. For more information about the issues we've discussed today, engage with us online at iasoybeans.com. You can also find the Iowa Soybean Association on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. The State of Soy welcomes your feedback, comments, and questions. Send them my way. You can reach me by phone at 515-975-4168 or send me an email at aputze@iasoybeans.com. Your input is always valued and appreciated. And be sure to join us next month for a conversation about on-farm production research conducted by the Iowa Soybean Association and its partners, and most importantly, how you can put that research to work on your farm to improve production and profitability. Until then, the very best to you from the Iowa Soybean Association. Now go make it a great day.